their impressions, if they share with you, of course.
Of course. Today, Anna, two of them are no longer children. They're teenagers. But unfortunately, like the majority of their generation, most of their childhood has been spent in a war. This has forced them to grow up too quickly. But I like to feel that it's also helped them appreciate what really matters in life. And so almost every day, they'll come home with stories to share and questions to ask. And as you can imagine, I'm no longer the one setting the topic of conversation or determining what information they have access to. Sometimes they're angry and frustrated, sometimes they're sad. I believe it's my role as a mother to help them develop the skills that they'll need to formulate their own opinions and navigate the world around them, as opposed to telling them what they should be thinking or how they should be feeling. And ultimately, if I'm successful, they'll grow up to be independent thinkers.
And how did sanctions influence, first of all, the Syrian people and you as family?
Well, I don't think it's a secret to anyone that the sanctions on Syria today have affected Syrian people in very much the same way as the sanctions in the 90s affected socially, seriously and mortally the Iraqi people. The only difference is that today nobody can claim, and especially those that enforce the sanctions, they cannot claim that they did not foresee the consequences on ordinary Syrian people. You have to ask yourself, where is the benefit of sanctioning basic food commodities? Where is the benefit of blocking vital access to medicines and healthcare equipment? Only a few days ago, I met with an old man who had just been diagnosed with cancer. And he was worried that he was not able to get the treatment that he needed because the chemotherapy was no longer available. That's what these sanctions are doing to ordinary people. And this is only one example. In fact, just a few weeks ago, I think it was actually last week, the UN released a report that cited the significant increase in poverty and the unmeasurable suffering to ordinary Syrians as a result of these sanctions. What's most ironic is that they were imposed by the so-called Friends of Syria. What this report doesn't tell us, Anna, is that the situation would have been much, much harder had it not been for Syria's true friends who have stepped in and helped offset some of the political and economic consequences of these sanctions. And in this regard, Russia has been tremendous. It has and continues to provide invaluable humanitarian and economic assistance to Syria. And it's these noble efforts that have helped loosen the chokehold on ordinary Syrians. And this is something we'll never forget. I think as for the sanctions targeting me specifically, they are, I don't think they are significant, especially when you put things into perspective.
So let's continue with the humanitarian issues. Can you describe the situation? Because we have very controversial information, for example, about the situation around Aleppo.
Much has been said about the humanitarian situation in Syria, but in truth, the severity of the situation is beyond comprehension. The displacement, the poverty, the sickness, the suffering is possibly unprecedented. Ironically, Western media organizations have chosen to solely focus on the plight of refugees and those caught up in rebel-held areas, whereas in fact the vast majority of people displaced are living across the rest of the country. And these people as much as anybody else matter. And nobody has the right to dehumanize them based on the lines of a map. Now, in terms of our aid efforts, we are of course extending emergency humanitarian assistance, but there's also an urgent need to restore people's ability to access public services. And this is very, very important. Beyond this, there are programs that are in place that offer psychosocial services, vocational training, and small interest-free loans. Educational support is also provided to children who are struggling or have been out of school for a long period of time. Ultimately, our mission is to ease the dislocation and to remove the indignity that these people have had to endure. And we must continue to do this to the very best of our ability with all the resources we have available to us.
I would like to ask about your reaction on different criticism from European press or US press. What do you feel during you read these articles or you see some TV sets? What do you feel? What do you would like to tell the people who target you?
Well, first of all, I think it's to be expected. It's part of the position, or it comes with the territory, as they say. Even as this interview wraps up, it's almost certain that I will be subjected to some pretty harsh criticism by certain people or media organizations that are only interested in portraying me in a negative or even superficial manner. That's their agenda, and there is nothing I can do about it. I think these comments are primarily used to test who we are as individuals. And if you do not remain grounded when you hear the positive, you're more than likely to fold when you hear the negative. You may remember also that at one stage I was the Desert Rose, the elegant First Lady bringing reform, and so forth. As nice as these comments may seem, they actually don't have a lasting impact on me. What's important is that I remain humble and true to who I really am. And as I said, if the positive don't get to your head, then the negative are not going to hurt you either.
Okay, and what is about the future? How do you imagine and how do you would like Syria to be as soon as possible?
Syria comprises of land that has been continuously inhabited for a very long time. Over thousands of years, this soil has been exposed to dozens of wars and invasions, and some areas were completely destroyed. I know that Syria can and will rebuild itself. What's important is that we tackle the internal and external factors that fueled and prolonged the war. We owe this to future generations. As Syrians, we've always prevailed, and this period in our history is no different. It is known or often said that Syria means rising sun, and Syrians will rise again, that I can assure you.
And the last question, during all the war times, you didn't flee the country. Did someone recommend you to flee to save your life, and what was your response?
Well, you're right on both counts. First of all, I've been here since the beginning, and I never thought of being anywhere else at all. And secondly, yes, I was offered the opportunity to leave Syria, or rather to run from Syria. These offers included guarantees of safety and protection for my children, and even financial security. It doesn't take a genius to know what these people were really after. It was never about my well-being or my children. It was a deliberate attempt to shatter people's confidence in their president. And suffice to say, these offers were foolish and not even made by people who were Syrian.
And what was the most harmful incident during this war? Maybe it was the story of people in the village of Zara, or maybe it was the story of this child named Omran Dakniesh.
Let me phrase the question slightly differently. Why was the fate of the children in Zara not given the same media coverage as the tragedies of Aylan and Omran? The Western media decided to focus on these tragedies because it suited their media agenda. It's actually the West that is dividing our children in this conflict according to the political beliefs of their parents. Aylan was a Syrian child, irrespective of what his parents believed, as was Omran and the other innocent children in the Zara village massacre. These are all children. They are all innocent children. And they are all a loss to Syria, irrespective of which side of the conflict we support. And as a Syrian, I am personally saddened by the loss of every single child, whether it's Aylan or Omran or the many, many others whose names did not reach Western headlines. Ultimately, humanitarian aid should not be determined by geography, political orientation, or religious belief. It cannot be allowed to be driven by political agendas.